You ever wake up to the sound of your property being stolen and realize the law is the only thing standing between you and losing everything? The first thing that hit me wasn't the noise. It was the smell. Hot asphalt. Thick. Chemical. Burning the back of my throat before I even opened the door. Then came the low rumble. Heavy machinery. Slow. Deliberate. Like something big was already too far along to stop. I stepped outside barefoot, gravel biting into my heels out of habit. Except there was no gravel anymore. Just black. Fresh. Glossy. Still steaming in the cold morning air. My private road. $80,000 of compacted stone, drainage grading, and legal separation from the HOA. Buried under a fresh layer of asphalt I never approved. For a second, I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there, staring at the clean edges where my boundary markers used to be. Gone. Every single one. Replaced by clean paint lines and a temporary sign staked into my land like a flag. Future community access, Willow Ridge HOA. I could hear them before I saw them. Laughter. Casual. Like this was just another Tuesday upgrade project. A crew in neon vests rolled past me without even slowing down. One of them gave me a nod, like I was just another resident benefiting from their work. That's when the taste hit. Metal. Sharp. The kind that creeps up when your brain finally catches up with what your eyes are seeing. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. Overnight. I turned slowly, scanning the edge where my driveway met the subdivision entrance. That junction, that exact point, was why I paid extra. Why I made sure the deed was separate. Why I sat through 3 separate closings just to keep this road legally mine. And now it was gone. Not damaged. Not disputed. Converted. I didn't have to guess who did it. Right on cue, I heard the soft electric hum of a luxury SUV pulling up behind me. White. Polished. Perfectly clean tires rolling over what used to be my gravel. Vivian Ashcroft stepped out like she was arriving at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. HOA President. Real estate broker. Self-appointed architect of everyone else's life. Her smile was already in place before she even spoke. "Oh good. You're up," she said, like we were neighbors discussing lawn care. "We didn't want to disturb you too early." I didn't answer. I just looked past her, back at the road. Steam still rising. Heat waves bending the morning air. "We're upgrading the entrance," she continued, stepping onto my land without hesitation. "This area needed better accessibility. Property values, you understand. Property values." I let that sit in the air between us. My fingers curled slightly, not from anger, but from calculation. She kept talking, explaining, justifying. Every word polished, rehearsed, confident. Like she'd already decided how this story ended. "You'll receive the assessment invoice by mail," she added, almost as an afterthought. "It's a shared benefit." That's when I finally looked at her. Really looked. The perfect posture. The calm eyes. The absolute certainty that she'd already won. And in that moment, I realized something important. She thought this was about the road. About asphalt. About access. She had no idea what she had actually touched. I took one slow breath, the smell of fresh tar filling my lungs again, and nodded once. No argument. No raised voice. Just a quiet acknowledgement. Because the truth is, by the time that asphalt cooled, I was already thinking 3 moves ahead. And what she didn't know was that every single car that would park on that road was about to become part of my response. I did not argue with her. That was the first thing she got wrong about me. People like Vivian expect noise. They expect raised voices, threats, maybe even a lawyer letter within 24 hours. They thrive on that chaos because it gives them control. But I have spent too many years in development deals and contract disputes to react on emotion. Emotion loses cases. Paper wins them. I walked back inside without another word, the heat from that fresh asphalt still radiating through the soles of my feet, and closed the door behind me like nothing had happened. The house felt different. Same walls. Same quiet. But the air carried that faint chemical smell drifting in through the vents, like a reminder that something had been altered outside my control. I went straight to my office. No hesitation. No pacing. Just movement. The drawer slid open with a soft click, and there it was. A thick, slightly worn folder with a label I had not touched in years. Property acquisition. Access road agreement. I placed it on the desk, ran my fingers along the edge for a second, then opened it slowly. The paper had that dry, textured feel, the kind you only get from documents that actually matter. Not copies. Originals. Signed. Recorded. Enforced. Most people think buying land is simple. You sign, you pay, you move on. But what they do not see are the layers underneath. Easements. Access rights. Commercial clauses buried in language that looks boring until someone tries to cross a line. And I had paid very close attention when I bought this place. Because I did not just want land. I wanted control. My eyes moved down the page, line by line, not skimming, not guessing. Confirming. The exact boundary description. The legal classification of the road. Private access. Independently deeded. Not subject to subdivision governance. I could still hear the faint hum of machinery outside, fading now as the crew wrapped up their work. They thought they had finished something. That was the interesting part. They thought this was complete. Then I found it again. The clause most people would ignore because it sounded technical. Enforcement rights. Not just access. Enforcement. My thumb stopped on the paragraph, pressing lightly against the paper as I read it twice, then a third time. I did not smile. I do not do that when things matter. But I felt it. That quiet shift. The moment when confusion turns into clarity. Because this was not just about ownership. It was about control over use. Over vehicles. Over anything that occupied that surface. And then there was the second piece. The one I had almost forgotten about. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking softly, and looked toward the filing cabinet across the room. Lower drawer. Old contracts. The kind you keep because you might need them one day, even if you hope you never do. I stood, crossed the room, and pulled it open. Metal rails sliding, paper shifting. It took less than 10 seconds to find it. A contract from years ago, signed when I was still actively working larger developments. A standing agreement with a regional towing network. Not exclusive, not flashy, just efficient. Legally tight. Still valid unless terminated. And I had never terminated it. I placed that contract next to the deed and stepped back, looking at both documents side by side on the desk. That was the moment everything locked into place. Outside, I heard a car pass over the new asphalt for the first time. Smooth. Quiet. Exactly what Vivian wanted. Access. Convenience. Community use. I walked back to the window and watched as one of the HOA residents pulled onto what used to be my gravel, tires gliding over that fresh black surface without a second thought. Then another car followed. And another. It did not take long. People always take what looks available. They do not ask. They assume. That is human nature. And right now, that assumption was exactly what I needed. I rested my hand against the glass, feeling the faint vibration as another vehicle passed by, and let out a slow breath. No confrontation. No warning signs. Not yet. Because timing matters more than reaction. You do not shut something down before it exposes itself. You let it grow. Let it settle. Let them believe it is theirs. And then you enforce the truth all at once. I turned away from the window, already mapping out the sequence in my head. Names. Plates. Patterns. The way they would use the road without thinking twice. Vivian thought she had upgraded her community. What she had actually done was invite every single one of them onto legally controlled ground they did not understand. And once they were all on it, I would not need to say a word. By noon, the road looked like it had always belonged to them. That was the part one needed. Fresh asphalt has a smell that lingers, but visually, it settles fast. Clean edges. Smooth surface. No history. No reminder of what it replaced. Just a finished product that invites use. And they used it. I watched from the same window most of the afternoon, not standing still, not staring, just moving through the house like any normal day while keeping track without making it obvious. The first wave came around lunch. A gray pickup truck I had seen parked near the entrance before. It rolled slowly at first, like the driver was unsure, then picked up speed once the tires held steady on the surface. Confidence. That is how it starts. Then a white SUV followed, cutting the corner tighter, already treating the space like it was designed for them. No hesitation. No second thought. By 2 o'clock, the pattern was clear. They were not just testing it. They had accepted it. The road had been absorbed into their routine in less than 6 hours. That is how quickly ownership disappears when someone redraws the lines without resistance. I stepped outside again, this time with shoes on, walking the edge of the pavement slowly. The heat had dropped, but the surface still held warmth. A faint shimmer hovered just above it in the sunlight. Tire marks were already forming. Not damage, just proof of use. I crouched near where one of my old boundary markers had been and brushed my fingers across the asphalt. Smooth, fresh, permanent, at least in their minds. Behind me, I heard another vehicle approach. A black sedan. It slowed slightly when it saw me, then continued forward, passing within a few feet like I was just another neighbor inspecting a shared space. The driver did not wave, did not ask. That told me everything. I stood up and turned, watching the car disappear deeper into the subdivision. That was number 9. I had started counting without realizing it. Now I made it intentional. Inside, I grabbed a legal pad and a pen. Nothing digital. Not yet. There is something about writing things down that forces clarity. I sat at the kitchen counter, angled toward the window, and began listing them. Time, vehicle type, color, direction of travel. No guesswork, no assumptions, just facts. Another car passed. Number 10, silver crossover. 30 seconds later, number 11, blue compact. The rhythm built naturally. In and out, like the road had always been part of their flow. Around 3 o'clock, I heard a different sound. A door slam. Heavier. More deliberate. I looked up to see Vivian again, stepping out of her SUV, this time walking along the edge of the pavement with slow, satisfied steps. She paused near the sign they had planted earlier, adjusting it slightly so it faced the incoming traffic more directly. Presentation mattered to her. Optics always did. She glanced toward my house, saw me through the glass, and gave a small nod. Not friendly, not hostile, just acknowledgement. Like we were now participants in the same system. I did not respond. I just kept writing. Number 14, number 15, number 16. She lingered for a moment longer, then turned and walked back to her vehicle, heels clicking lightly against the new surface. That sound carried differently than gravel. Sharper, cleaner, controlled. The SUV door closed, engine started, and she drove directly over the road again, slower this time, almost like she was demonstrating ownership to anyone watching. That was number 17. By late afternoon, the list had grown longer than I expected. The sun dipped just enough to cast shadows across the pavement, stretching each passing vehicle into elongated shapes that slid across my property without permission. I did not interrupt them. I did not post signs. I did not call anyone, because interruption would have changed behavior. And I needed behavior exactly as it was. Consistent, repeated, documented. Around 5:30, the flow shifted. People coming home. Higher volume. Faster turns. Less attention. That is when mistakes happen. That is when patterns lock in. I stood by the door this time, close enough to hear the tires more clearly. A soft hum. No gravel crunch. No resistance. Exactly what they wanted. Convenience. Efficiency. Ownership without paperwork. I added more to the list. 23, 24, 25. Each number carried weight now, not because of the cars themselves, but because of what they represented. Usage, presence, legal positioning. By the time the sky started turning that pale orange at the horizon, I had filled an entire page. I flipped it over and kept going. My hand moved steadily. No rush, no hesitation. Outside, the road looked calm. Normal. Like nothing unusual had ever happened. But underneath that surface, the reality had already shifted. They just could not see it yet. And that was exactly how I wanted it. By the time the sun dropped behind the tree line, the road had fully transitioned from intrusion to routine. Porch lights flicked on one by one across the subdivision, soft yellow pools of light stretching across asphalt that did not belong to them, but now carried their entire evening rhythm. I closed the front door quietly and walked back to the kitchen, the legal pad still resting where I left it. 2 full pages. 53 entries. I ran my thumb along the edge of the paper, feeling the slight indentation from where the pen had pressed harder on certain lines. Those were the moments I noticed patterns tightening. Certain vehicles returning at predictable times. Certain drivers taking the same angle every pass. Consistency. That was more valuable than anything else. I set the pad down and reached for my phone, not to scroll, not to call, but to capture. Photos through the window. Short clips. Nothing dramatic. Just quiet documentation. License plates. Timestamps. Angles of entry. The kind of evidence that does not argue, does not exaggerate, just exists. Outside, another car rolled through. Number 54. Headlights swept across the front of my house for a brief second before disappearing down the curve. I wrote it down without looking up again. Around 7:15, the tone shifted slightly. More people were home now. Fewer pass-throughs. More parked vehicles lining the edges where the pavement widened near the entrance. That was new. They were not just using it. They were settling into it. I stepped outside again, this time standing closer to the edge where my original gravel had met the subdivision. The air had cooled, but the asphalt still held a faint warmth underfoot. A white sedan sat parked halfway along the shoulder, engine off, interior dark. No hesitation. No permission. Just placement. I glanced down the road. Another SUV idled briefly, then pulled in behind it, parking along the same stretch like it had always been designated space. That made 56. I did not need to rush anymore. The situation was building itself exactly the way I needed it to. I turned and walked back inside, closing the door with the same calm motion as before. In the quiet of the house, the contrast was sharp. Outside was movement, assumption, expansion. Inside was stillness. Control. I moved back to the office and sat down, both documents still laid out exactly where I had left them earlier. The deed. The towing agreement. I read them again, slower this time, not searching, just reinforcing. Every word mattered. Every clause had a purpose. Enforcement rights over privately deeded access. Authority over unauthorized vehicles occupying that surface. It was all there. Clean. Undeniable. I reached for my laptop and opened a blank document. Names came first, then plate numbers, then timestamps pulled from the videos I had just recorded. Organized. Structured. Each entry tied to a moment of use. Not one or two incidents. A pattern. A system. By 8:30, I had built a list that no one could dismiss as accidental. 58 vehicles. Some repeated. Some new. All documented. I leaned back in the chair, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the background the only sound in the room. Outside, the road was quiet now. Parked cars resting in place like they had always belonged there. That was the illusion. Ownership through repetition. Through lack of resistance. Through assumption. I stood and walked back to the window one more time. The streetlights reflected off the smooth surface, casting long, clean lines down the length of the road. It looked perfect. Exactly the kind of upgrade Vivian would be proud of. I rested my hand lightly against the glass, watching the stillness settle in. This was the point most people would act. Confront. Post signs. Make noise. But noise would only warn them. And warning changes behavior. I needed them exactly as they were right now. Comfortable. Unaware. Fully committed to the idea that this road was theirs to use, to park on, to rely on. Because once that belief sets in, the correction does not just inconvenience them. It shocks them. I stepped away from the window and turned off the lights in the room, letting the house fall into darkness while the outside remained softly lit. Timing. That was the only thing left. Everything else was already in place. The road, the vehicles, the documentation, the authority. I checked the time once more, then closed the laptop slowly. Tonight, nothing would happen. That was important. Let them sleep. Let them wake up expecting everything to be exactly the same. Because tomorrow would not be about arguing who was right. It would be about enforcing it. The alarm did not wake me up. I was already awake. The kind of awake where your eyes are open before your body moves, where your mind is already 3 steps ahead before your feet even touch the floor. The house was silent, but outside, I could feel it. That stillness that comes just before a routine begins again. I got up without turning on any lights, moving through the house by memory, the faint blue of early morning seeping through the windows. The air was cooler now. The smell of asphalt had faded, replaced by that neutral, quiet scent of night settling into morning. I stepped into the office first. Not the kitchen, not the door, the office. Because this was not about reacting. It was about executing. The documents were still where I left them. Deed on the left. Towing agreement on the right. I sat down and opened my laptop again, the screen lighting up the room with a soft glow. The list from last night was complete. 58 vehicles. Time stamped. Verified. I read through it once more, not because I doubted it, but because precision matters. Every plate number had to be right. Every entry clean. No room for error. Then I opened a new tab and pulled up the contact list tied to that old agreement. Names I had not used in years. Companies that did not advertise loudly, but operated efficiently. The kind that handle things quietly, legally, without questions as long as the paperwork is in order. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second, then I started typing. Not emotional, not aggressive, just factual. Property address, legal classification, enforcement authority, attached documentation, list of unauthorized vehicles currently occupying the surface, request for coordinated removal under existing contract terms. I attached the files. Deed, clause highlighted, agreement, signature pages visible, then the list, all 58 entries. I read the message twice, then once more. No extra words, no explanation beyond what was necessary. Then I hit send. The sound of that single click felt louder than it should have in the quiet room. I closed the laptop halfway, not fully, just enough to dim the light, and stood up. Timing now shifted from preparation to observation. I walked to the front door and opened it slowly. The air outside was crisp, carrying that faint hum of a neighborhood about to wake up. The road was still there, clean, quiet, lined with vehicles that did not belong to it. Parked in confidence, parked in assumption. I stepped onto the edge of the asphalt again, feeling the cool surface under my shoes this time. No heat left, just a finished layer covering something they thought was gone. In the distance, I heard the first sign of movement. A car door closing, then another. Engines starting one by one. Morning routines beginning. Coffee runs, commutes, school drop-offs. The same patterns I had documented now repeating themselves in real time. But this morning was different. I checked my watch. 6:42 a.m. Still early enough that most of them had not left yet. That mattered, because once they left, the opportunity would scatter. I needed them here. Stationary, unaware. Another engine turned over. A truck further down the road. Headlights flicked on, casting long beams across the pavement. Then I heard it. Not loud, not dramatic, just distinct enough to stand out from the normal sounds of the morning. A diesel engine. Low, steady, approaching from the main road. I did not turn immediately. I let the sound come closer, letting it blend just enough with the rest before separating itself again. Then a second engine joined it. Then a third. Different directions. Same tone. Coordinated without needing to be obvious. I shifted my stance slightly, still facing forward, still calm, as the first tow truck came into view at the edge of the entrance. No lights flashing. No noise beyond the engine. Just presence. It rolled in slowly, followed by another, then another behind it. Professional spacing. No rush. No hesitation. They did not look at me. They did not need to. They had the paperwork. That was enough. I exhaled slowly, feeling the last piece fall into place. Across the road, one of the residents stepped out of his house, keys in hand, mid-step toward his parked car. He paused when he saw the trucks. Confusion first, then uncertainty. He looked around like he was trying to understand what he was seeing. That reaction spread quickly. Doors opening, heads turning, the quiet assumption of ownership beginning to crack. I did not move. I did not speak. I just stood there on the edge of what was mine, watching as reality began to correct itself without a single word from me. The first hook engaged with a soft metallic click that carried farther than any engine noise. It was not loud, but it was final. One of the residents froze mid-step, keys still dangling from his hand, eyes locked on the back of his own vehicle as the tow arms settled into place. There was a pause in the air, a split second where nobody fully understood what was happening. Then the second truck moved. Then the third. The rhythm started quietly, controlled, almost surgical. No shouting, no chaos, just motion. I watched as each operator stepped out with the same calm efficiency, checking plates against their lists, confirming matches, moving with the kind of precision that comes from doing this thousands of times. Across the street, a woman stepped out in a robe, phone already in her hand, confusion written across her face as she scanned the line of trucks now filling what they thought was their access road. She said something I could not hear, but the tone was clear. Question first. Panic second. The man closest to her pointed toward one of the trucks, his posture shifting from confusion to frustration in seconds. He took a few quick steps forward, then stopped just short of the operator, like he suddenly realized this was not something he could just interrupt. The operator did not argue, did not explain. He simply handed over a printed sheet. Documentation. Clean. Official. The kind of paper that ends conversations before they begin. I could see the man's shoulders tense as he read it, his stance losing that initial confidence, replaced by something slower. Processing. Understanding. Behind him, another vehicle lifted slightly as a second truck secured its position. Tires left the ground just enough to break contact, just enough to remove control. No damage. No force. Just enforcement. The sound of engines idling mixed with the low hydraulic hum created a steady backdrop that filled the entire entrance. More doors opened along the street now. More faces. Sleep still clinging to them, but replaced quickly by confusion, then disbelief. They were looking at something that did not fit the version of reality they had accepted yesterday. That was the shift. That moment when assumption collides with fact. I stayed where I was, hands relaxed at my sides, not hiding, not stepping forward, just present. Because this was not about confrontation. This was about visibility. Let them see. Let them connect it on their own. One of the residents finally turned toward me, his expression sharp, searching for an answer. I held his gaze for a second, then nodded once, slow and deliberate. Not aggressive, not apologetic, just acknowledgement. He looked back at the truck, then down at the paper in his hand again. The realization was settling in now, piece by piece. This was not random. This was not a mistake. This was authorized. Another car rose slightly as a third operator moved into position. The line of vehicles that had felt permanent last night was now breaking apart, one by one, replaced by empty space and quiet disbelief. Phones came out everywhere. Calls started. Voices rose slightly, but never reached chaos. Because even in frustration, there was hesitation. That hesitation comes when people realize they might not be on the right side of something. Then I heard it. Heels on asphalt. Fast. Sharp. Approaching from behind the parked line. Vivian. She moved quickly, her posture tight, her expression already shifting from confusion to control, scanning the scene like she was trying to find where to insert herself back into authority. She stopped near the first truck, speaking to the operator with that same composed tone she always used, but there was an edge to it now. He handed her the same document. She took it, eyes moving across the page, faster than the others had. She understood more quickly. That was the difference. Her shoulders stiffened, just slightly, and for the first time since I had met her, her expression broke. Not dramatically, just enough. The certainty was gone, replaced by calculation. She looked up from the paper and turned toward me. This time, there was no nod, no performance, just direct eye contact across the length of the road she thought she had taken. I did not move. I did not speak. I just stood there, letting the quiet fill the space between us while behind her, another vehicle lifted cleanly off the asphalt that was never hers to give away. She did not walk toward me right away. That was the first sign she understood exactly what was happening. Instead, Vivian stayed where she was, holding that paper a little tighter now, her eyes moving between the trucks, the operators, and the residents gathering around her like she was supposed to fix this. That was her role. Control the situation. Reframe the narrative. But this was not something she could talk her way out of. Not with paperwork that did not come from her. One of the residents stepped closer to her, speaking quickly, frustration rising in his voice. He pointed at his car, then at the truck lifting it, then back at her like he expected an immediate solution. She did not answer him right away. She was still reading, still recalculating. I could see it in the way her jaw tightened, just slightly, like she was trying to keep her composure locked in place while the ground shifted under her. Another vehicle rolled backward onto the truck bed, smooth and controlled, the operator securing it with the same quiet efficiency as before. No rush. No hesitation. Just process. That sound, the low mechanical movement, repeated again and again, turning what used to be a full line of parked cars into growing empty spaces. And those empty spaces said more than any argument ever could. Vivian finally moved. Not toward the trucks. Toward me. Slow at first, then more direct, her heels striking the pavement with that same sharp rhythm. But this time it was not controlled. It was urgent. She stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see the shift in her expression clearly now. The confidence was gone, replaced by something sharper. Not panic. Not yet. But pressure. What is this? She asked, holding up the paper slightly, like the answer was supposed to come from me. Her voice was steady, but thinner than before. I looked at the document in her hand, then back at her. Enforcement, I said. One word. No explanation. No emotion. Just fact. She stared at me for a second, waiting for more. I did not give it. Behind her, Another resident raised his voice, louder this time, frustration spilling over as his car was lifted. He stepped forward, then stopped again when the operator simply pointed to the same printed notice. That hesitation spread again, like a ripple moving through the group. People were starting to understand the pattern. This was not targeted. This was not random. This was systematic. Vivian exhaled slowly, her eyes narrowing slightly as she shifted her stance. "This is a community road," she said, the words coming out sharper now, more force behind them. "You cannot just—" I cut her off, not by raising my voice, but by stepping half a pace forward, just enough to interrupt the rhythm of her sentence. "Private access road," I said, calm, measured. "Independently deeded." I watched the words land. Not emotionally, structurally. She knew what they meant. I could see it in the way her eyes flicked, just briefly, back to the paper in her hand, then to the asphalt beneath her feet. That moment of alignment. The paperwork. The reality. The mistake. Around us, the scene continued. Another car lifted. Another space cleared. The line was breaking down faster now. What had felt permanent 12 hours ago was now temporary, reversible, fragile. One of the residents stepped closer to us, holding his phone, screen facing Vivian. "They are saying we have to call some lot across town," he said, voice tight, controlled but strained. "They are charging per vehicle." That detail hung in the air for a second. Not loud, not dramatic, but heavy, because now it was not just inconvenience. It was cost. Vivian closed her eyes for the briefest second, then opened them again, her posture straightening like she was forcing control back into place. "Stop this," she said, looking directly at me now, dropping the performance entirely. Right now. I held her gaze. Did not blink. Did not react. "I did not start it," I said quietly. That was the truth. Simple. Unavoidable. Behind her, the last few vehicles were being prepared, the operators moving with the same steady pace, unaffected by the tension building around them. No arguments. No negotiation. Just execution of what had already been authorized. Vivian turned slightly, looking back at the road, at the empty spaces now stretching where her community access had been hours ago. Then she looked down at the asphalt beneath her feet again, like she was seeing it for the first time not as something she controlled, but as something she never owned. When she turned back to me, the question was gone, replaced by something else entirely. Understanding. Too late, but clear. And in that moment, she finally realized this was never about the road. It was about who had the right to decide what happened on it. The last car came off the ground just after 7:20. No announcement. No signal. Just the same quiet motion that had been repeating for the past 30 minutes, finishing the process the same way it started. Controlled. Precise. Final. The road that had been lined with vehicles hours ago now stretched clean and empty under the morning light, the fresh asphalt reflecting a pale glow as if nothing had ever occupied it. But the absence was louder than anything that had been there before. You could feel it. The shift in the air. The weight of realization settling over everyone standing there. Engines were gone. Doors were closed. The normal rhythm of a neighborhood morning had been replaced with stillness and scattered conversations that did not quite know where to land. Vivian stood in the middle of it, the paper still in her hand, but now it hung lower at her side like it had lost its usefulness. Around her, people were talking over each other, asking questions she could not answer, looking at her the way they had always looked at her before, except now there was something new behind it. Doubt. One man paced near the curb, phone pressed to his ear, repeating the same phrase over and over like he could force a different outcome through sheer volume. "Yes, all of them." "No, I am serious, they are all gone." Another woman stood near where her car had been, staring at the empty space like it might reappear if she waited long enough. The operators did not linger. One by one, the trucks pulled away, merging back toward the main road with the same quiet discipline they arrived with. No victory. No acknowledgement. Just completion. Within minutes, they were gone. The sound of diesel faded into the distance, leaving behind a silence that felt sharper than the noise ever did. I stayed where I was for a moment longer, letting that silence settle completely. Then I turned and walked back inside without saying anything else. The door closed behind me with a soft click, sealing off the outside world like it had nothing to do with me anymore. In the kitchen, I poured a cup of coffee, the familiar sound of the machine filling the space, steady and normal, like the morning had not just shifted an entire neighborhood's understanding of ownership. I took a sip, leaned against the counter, and looked out through the window again. Vivian was still there, but she was not directing anything now. She was listening, reacting, trying to contain something that had already moved beyond her control. A few minutes later, she turned and walked quickly toward her house, phone already in her hand, her posture tighter than I had ever seen it. That was the next phase. Calls, lawyers, attempts to reverse what had just happened. But the foundation was already set. Paperwork does not panic. Contracts do not negotiate after execution. Outside, residents began to disperse slowly, some heading back inside, others standing in small groups, trying to piece together what they had missed. The road remained empty, clean, untouched, exactly as it should have been from the beginning. I finished my coffee, set the cup down, and walked back to the office. The documents were still on the desk, exactly where I left them, calm and unchanged, like they had always known how this would end. I gathered them, neatly, placed them back into the folder, and slid it into the drawer. No rush, no urgency, just closure. Because this was never about making a scene. It was never about proving a point out loud. It was about letting the truth stand on its own, undeniable and enforced at the right moment. I moved back toward the window one last time, looking out at the now empty stretch of asphalt that had briefly been something else in their minds. A small breeze moved across the surface, carrying nothing with it. No cars, no sound, just space. And in that space, the lesson was clear, even if nobody said it out loud. You can paint over ownership. You can rename it. You can build on top of it overnight. But if you never had the right to it in the first place, it was only ever temporary. The road stayed empty longer than I expected. Not just that morning, but into the afternoon, and then into the next day. It was not that people stopped using it completely. It was the hesitation, that invisible pause before turning onto it, that slight slowdown before crossing a line they had stepped over without thinking just 24 hours earlier. I noticed it from the same window, the same angle, the same quiet observation that had started this whole thing. A car would approach, roll forward, then hesitate for a second like the driver was replaying what happened in their head. Some turned around. Some continued, but slower, more careful, like they were testing something they no longer trusted. That was the difference. Ownership is not just legal. It is psychological. And once that confidence cracks, it does not come back the same way. Around mid-morning, a black SUV stopped right at the entrance, engine idling. The driver leaned forward slightly, looking down the stretch of asphalt like it had changed overnight. Then the window rolled down. A glance toward my house. A quick check. Not for permission. For confirmation. I stepped outside, not rushing, just enough to be visible. The driver saw me, held that look for a second, then gave a small nod and slowly backed up, choosing a different route. No words. No confrontation. Just adjustment. That happened more than once. By the third time, it was no longer coincidence. It was pattern. Inside, the house felt exactly the same. Quiet. Controlled. The documents were back in the drawer, untouched, like tools that had already done their job. I did not need to keep them out anymore. Their effect was already in motion. Around noon, I saw Vivian again. Not walking fast this time. Not directing. Just moving along the edge of the road with a slower, more measured pace. She stopped near where the sign had been placed the day before. The community access sign was gone now. Not broken. Not removed by force. Just gone. I had not touched it. That meant she did. That meant she understood. She stood there for a moment, looking down at the asphalt, then across the boundary where my land met what she controlled. Her posture was different now. Less rigid. Less certain. She glanced toward my house again, but this time there was no challenge in it. No performance. Just acknowledgement. Then she turned and walked back without saying a word. That silence carried more weight than anything she had said before. The rest of the week settled into a new rhythm. Cars still passed through occasionally, but never parked. Never lingered. The line that had been crossed was now visible again, even without markers. People respected it not because of a sign, but because of what they had seen happen when it was ignored. And that is the kind of boundary that holds. One afternoon, I stepped out and walked the length of the road slowly, the same way I had when it first changed. The asphalt had cooled completely now, blending into the landscape like it had always been there, but the meaning beneath it was different. It was still mine. Legally. Structurally. Undeniably, the surface had changed. The control had not. I stopped near the entrance and looked back toward the subdivision. Quiet, ordered, controlled in their own way, and separate again, exactly how I intended when I bought this place. I turned and walked back toward the house, the sound of my steps steady against the pavement, no interruption, no resistance. Inside, I paused by the window one last time, looking out at the same stretch that had been contested, used, and then corrected. No signs, no barriers, just understanding. That was enough. Because the truth is, I never needed to raise my voice. I never needed to argue. I did not need to prove anything loudly. I just needed to let them believe something that was not theirs, and then show them exactly why it never was. And once that lesson lands the right way, it does not fade. It settles. Quiet. Permanent. Just like the road beneath it.